Okay. I see we have some individuals joining already. Before we really kick off the 2024 E&E Leader Solutions Summit, we're going to give attendees a chance to join. Feel free to answer the poll that's up on your screen, and we will be officially starting in roughly 30 to 60 seconds. So thank you for being on with us today, wherever you are in the world. We do have quite a large audience from over 50 countries at this point. It was 50 this morning, and it's actually jumped to over 50. So we appreciate you taking the time to be on with us today. Okay. And thank you to those who have started to answer the poll question already. We are going to leave that up for a little bit. And without further ado, welcome to the 2024 Solutions Summit. Thank you for being on with us. My name is Jessica Hunt, and I am one of the co-owners of E&E Leader. We are so pleased to open up this session with Paul Garcia. He is from the Office of the Air Force Office of Energy Assurance, and he's a senior advisor in business development. He was also a judge for this year's E&E Leader Awards. So we appreciate all of the work that he has done with Environment and Energy Leader, and we are absolutely thrilled to have him on with us today. So before we really get into the conversation, just want to go through a couple of troubleshooting items with attendees. If you have any issues during the event, please feel free to reach out to me. You'll be able to find my information in the lobby. Please submit all questions for Paul using the Q&A button, or if you'd like, you can use the chat button too. We will be monitoring both. Paul is going to be here, going to talk a little bit about what he does and what the mission of the Air Force Office of Energy Assurance is. And then we're really going to have a discussion. So feel free during our discussion, if you have questions about anything we're talking about, put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A widget, and we will do our best to get to as many before the top of the hour. So Paul, welcome. Tell us about yourself. How did you get to this role? Give us some of your background that we can't read on LinkedIn or in your bio.
Sure. Well, as you said, my name's Paul Garcia. I'm a senior advisor for business development. That's a contractor with the Air Force Office of Energy Assurance, or OEA, as we call it. Lots of acronyms in the military. Jessica, I want to thank you and our other hosts at Environment and Energy Leader for inviting me to speak with you this morning. And of course, a special thanks to folks who had to adjust their schedules to join us in what we think is morning. I'm curious to see, where in the world our listeners are tuning in from. So if you have a few seconds, you can type in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'm eager to see these 50 countries that we're talking to. Okay, Michigan, Florida, Texas, a little bit of everywhere. I'm so happy that so many people are joining us this morning for the summit to talk about a different E&E, in this case, everything everywhere, because it does seem that when we're talking about environment and energy topics, it really does feel like a bit of everything everywhere. Wouldn't you agree, Jessica?
Oh, definitely. And, when we were prepping for this discussion, the different conversations we had, we talked about how there are so many different aspects of your role and what the office is doing that we could cover, that we could talk about everything for the entire day. But we have an hour, so we're going to do our best to get through as much as we can for our attendees.
Sure, yeah. Well, so one of the parts of my job that I enjoy the most is that even though we're facing so many challenges, in my group, I get to talk with every one of the energy innovators that approaches our office. And you guys are generally an enthusiastic bunch. So you might wonder, why did I choose to work with Air Force Energy? And here's another one. If you want, you can type in your guesses in the chat and I'll tell you the answer in a minute. You may or may not be aware, but the Air Force is one of, if not the largest single energy consumer in the country. I work with installation energy, that's infrastructure, anything that's typically connected to a utility company, water, power, gas, etc. And it's separate from operational energy like fuel for jet planes. being in charge of stakeholder engagement for the office. I enjoy meeting tech innovators every single day, whether that's a product or a business process or something else clever. You guys expose me to and inspire me to think about the art of the possible. Um, in the past, I've owned 4 different companies and worked for dozens of others. So here's your answer about why now Air Force Energy. At this point in my career, I'm only motivated by doing meaningful work. And you out there listening really are doing meaningful work, developing creative solutions, saving the planet, reducing waste, and still more amazing things. I'm so happy that you're all working on this with me. Our office says energy assurance is mission assurance. And as you'd expect, without power and water, we can't do much of anything. Lacking those 2 things, it'd be like showing up to perform at a heavy metal concert with an acoustic guitar and a parched throat. In the Air Force, we're not thinking small. It's a lot of why I've said everything everywhere. Air Force is leading all the services and frankly, the rest of the federal government with our progressive and creative thinking about energy and environmental effects. That's probably quite different from what you expected when you thought about the military. Mission still comes first, but our mandate to switch to carbon pollution-free energy also tells us to consider community benefit, not only what's going on inside our fence. There are almost 200 Air Force bases around the globe to bring in line with our high standards for energy and water resilience in a remarkably short amount of time. We're working on these challenges nearly everywhere around the globe, and no 2 installations are exactly alike. Everything we do is completely customized to the local situation. When we act to close the specific gaps at each base, we don't have time to manage a series of 10 separate, sequential, small projects with all the overhead of soliciting bids and managing contracts. We need to do everything all at once at an installation. It's both a holistic and necessary approach to meet the timeline we've been given. We want to ensure all the new systems and upgrades work together flawlessly. That doesn't happen nearly as well if we're only making changes to one thing at a time. To address the aggressive goals and improve resilience across the Air Force critical missions, we need to think more than big. We need to think gigantic. So how do we develop effective energy resilience solutions? Sometimes resilience gaps can be resolved using known technologies, but in the energy landscape, innovative solutions are popping up every day. And to put it simply, we don't know what we don't know. So we need partners with cutting edge and possibly game-changing technologies to identify solutions and then share them with us at OEA. When we have this, our team of experts work together to examine, model, and analyze how the technology could align with our known collection of resilience gaps. And OEA builds economic models with specific inputs to accurately determine technology feasibility. We use analytical tools to identify and configure appropriate technologies. Finally, we find a way to integrate these technologies. It might sound surprising, but Congress doesn't give us money to solve energy and water resilience issues. The Air Force, with its everything everywhere approach, has succeeded because we think outside the box. We also listen to our stakeholders from academia, from industry, and our installations themselves. We're not out there publishing a series of requisitions to fill or checklists of equipment to procure. In fact, we're mostly technology agnostic. If it gets us reliably to our goals on time, we're interested. We're operating more like the business community than the government you typically think of as nothing but red tape. So by listening to the pain points and needs of stakeholders on all sides, we're collaboratively finding the sweet spots that make business sense and meet Air Force goals. I mentioned earlier that the Air Force is one of, if not the largest energy consumer in the country. I thought I'd share some numbers you can read yourself. This is a huge scope for us to achieve energy and water resilience. The important thing to remember about these numbers and why Air Force installations resilience is so critical to the mission is that air and space forces fight from fixed installations. That's different from Army, that's different from Navy. You know, Army moves all the time, Navy can get on a ship and sail away. For us, the jets can be moved between locations, but the installations themselves are the cornerstone support centers that drive the mission. You can't pick up a radar station and chuck it across, to another base. We need to update and modernize the aging infrastructure of these installations. Many of these bases have been around a long time. We're often supporting new and increasing mission requirements, requiring more and more reliable energy. And we really don't want to be in a situation with our infrastructure where to add something new, we need to unplug something equivalent. These are some highlights of policies directing our efforts as we continue to close resilience gaps. The Air Force has set these aggressive goals and timelines drawn from other policy mandates, such as complete energy independence from Russian-derived sources by 2027, 99.9% energy resilience for critical missions by 2030, 50% carbon pollution-free energy also by 2030, 7 days of islanding capability for critical missions. And the overall climate action plan includes cleaner climate-informed technologies and energy sources, fleet electrification, and a net zero emissions portfolio by 2046. Although this is a really dense slide, there's a lot of detail here. I want to illuminate a common thread for you. Air Force intends to reduce future risk by maximizing energy efficiency and securing alternative sources of power and water. This is a whole government effort, but Air Force has really been leading the pack. We are able to combine our efforts with other agencies, such as ones that have no energy office, and include them in our projects for a scale-up. As an example, there are veterans hospitals all over, mostly near military bases. They can participate in the scope of one of our projects to cover their hospital and also be part of that scale-up. OEA was created to support a planning to execution project pipeline to improve power and water resilience at installations. Our efforts support bases as extended staff for them to utilize. We're a central hub for expertise and experience, so the one energy manager or civil engineer that's on a base isn't trying to figure out everything all at once by themselves. Some of what you may have heard, the new Air Force concept, the Great Power Competition. Within that, it has established a resilience integration as a new core capability. The Defense Department is creating a clearinghouse office called the Resilience Cell, clever name, right? And it will be located with the Air Force because we have demonstrated our effectiveness thus far. We view all our efforts through the lens of resilience. It really requires a little bit of everything all the time. And what that means is that in the presence, we are always analyzing resilience gaps and developing projects that address and close those gaps. Air Force is breaking grounds with methodologies and processes, not just technologies. We need to have the proper acquisition tools allow us to quickly succeed in the pursuit of innovative, cutting-edge solutions. Think back and ask yourselves, what do all the following have in common? The Apollo moonshot, unmanned aerial vehicles, that's hard to say sometimes, and COVID vaccines. These technologies, game-changing technologies, leveraged an acquisition tool known as Other Transaction Authority, or OTAs. Again, we just love our acronyms. And OTAs allow innovators to prototype solutions rapidly. They gather data, iterate, and de-risk the solution, all prior to entering into long-term contracts. At OEA, we are exploring how to leverage these OTAs to build the world's first ever utility-scale prototypes for cutting-edge geothermal energy technologies. Geothermal energy could provide long-term base load, that's the important part, electricity anywhere in the United States. Using OTAs, the Air Force has started its first prototypes. Once proven, we would turn this into a power purchase agreement. With the typical red tape, it often takes years, multiple solicitations, numerous contract modifications, multiple government teams, and appropriation cycles for a promising technology to go from demonstration to procurement. That's the red tape you're used to. This is why our office is leveraging OTAs to drive innovation. Unlike the standard FAR-based vehicles, sorry, another acronym, iterative and collaborative problem solving can occur after the down selection and continuously during the prototype phase. And unlike typical research and development approaches, if the prototype is successfully completed, the vendor can obtain a sole source follow-on contract from the same contract team. That's pretty important. Public-private partnerships are central to the Department of the Air Force's energy resilience strategy. In this photo, you see the 350 kilowatt hour solar array located at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. Rocky Mountain Power built the array and will own and operate it through 2046 as part of its Blue Sky program, but Hill Air Force Base will add the energy generated to its power grid. All these larger projects we're trying to do are made more possible by getting creative with how we use the tools at our disposal. People often ask us whether we prefer a power purchase agreement, energy assurance lease, utility privatization, or something else. And we tell them we'll use all or any combination required to get us to our resilience goals. For us, it's not or, it's and. This chart shows the resiliency dashboard for an imagined Air Force installation. Thought it would be helpful to define for you what the Air Force measures in terms of resilience. Not only each installation, but each mission on the base gets evaluated this way. We use this scoring system to segment types of resilience gaps, as well as make it easier to see what prioritization is required. The 5 R's here include robustness, redundancy, resourcefulness, response, and recovery. Energy assurance relies on a host of Air Force Civil Engineering Center partners to provide energy resilient solutions that deliver energy and water at bases. The process looks basically like this. We identify the gaps. These are detailed in installation energy plans, or IEPs. We work to close the gaps, and those recommendations come out in resilience solution reports, or RSRs. And then we implement solutions with various partners, and that shows up in view as projects and new opportunities, most of what the public sees. All this process is intended to lead to resilient infrastructure. I can't use that word enough. People sometimes ask us if we have prioritized our interests. So the 3 areas in which we're doing the most exploration right now are geothermal energy, long duration energy storage, and most forward-looking, the hydrogen ecosystem. Where we're making a lot of progress today is in electric vehicle support equipment, or EVSE. We have at least 40 pilots going on right now to examine every detail with this. So that's, again, a different kind of process where rather than having a series of pilots, one after the other to examine the next part of how to do that right, we're doing 40 at the same time, each looking at one particular aspect so that we can combine that knowledge. And by the end of this year, we'll know the right way to do it. As the number of microgrids increases, the business case for new nuclear makes more sense. So we're looking into that too. This is a small sampling of projects that we've been working on, shown here. Other technologies not listed on this slide include fuel cells, linear generators, wireless power transfer, DC transmission and distribution, and tidal generation. This is a quick view of some specific projects and outcomes that we regularly talk about. These details typically hold more interest for people who watch what's going on at specific bases, but here I'm more demonstrating the variety that you'll see across our portfolio of ongoing projects: microgrid, community solar, microreactor, geothermal, and wind plus battery storage. And so you don't think I've entirely glossed over the water resilience efforts. We have a collaborative project with the Navy to reuse abandoned oil derricks off the coast of California. We're piloting a desalination plant that's far enough offshore that it doesn't affect wildlife that's close to shore. California is well known to have water resource issues, and we're looking to see if reuse of these platforms can help address such water issues. If you have ideas for water resilience, I especially encourage you to share, as this area needs a lot more attention. This is a quick look at some of the innovative ways we're trying to get after our goals that go beyond just the traditional methods or using the traditional methods in new ways. And here's a high-level overview of how our office within the Air Force is organized. You can see some of how we divide up related expertise across various groups. I'm currently with the innovation group all the way to the right of your screen, labeled Advanced Technologies. The second most common question I hear beyond, are you interested in my product, is how can we work with the Air Force on projects? There are two ways to get started. Both are shown here. You can either respond to the open RFI, that's request for information, with ideas you'd like us to consider. It's not the complicated RFP process with a lot of detail. It's just a summary of what's your idea, what's the ideal situation that it works in, where should we be considering this, and what do we need to know about the technology. That RFI is linked on our office's main page of our website, and it goes through sam.gov. The second way is you can email our office and initiate a conversation that way. And in case you might worry that your email will end up in some black pit of no return when you email our office, this mailbox doesn't go to a robot. I see everything that comes in here, and we do our best to communicate immediately and not leave you wondering if anyone's paying attention. That
I
too.
will say, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I will say Paul is extremely responsive because I get emails back from him almost immediately. I believe we were both emailing each other last night at about 8 p.m.
Yeah,
about
somewhere
today's
there.
about today's talk.
Well, I'm glad that red tape issue's been solved for our agency. Now, as Jessica mentioned, I prepared to talk to you for a whole hour, but when we spoke recently about what we thought would be of interest to the audience, we thought you might appreciate more of a question and answer format than to listen to me lecture nonstop. So I did speed through those slides. You also have likely seen the Environment and Energy Awards this year. So congratulations to all the companies that were recognized. And at the very end of this session, I have the honor to be presenting 3 additional awards to outstanding companies who submitted entries in the energy innovation category. Our office felt these projects and products deserve special recognition, and I hope that the anticipation doesn't kill anyone in the audience.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Jessica, you're already back on screen with me. I can stop sharing the slides here, and we can talk about more stuff that I hope will fascinate or inspire your listening audience.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Prepared
And I
some
know,
questions for me, and I think you
yeah.
said we're taking some additional questions in the chat. If we have time for that, I'll answer to the best of my ability. And if it's something that will land me in the stockade, if I talk about it, I'll tell you and I'll pass.
Okay, sounds good. Really, before we get started, and I had this question as you were speaking, and it actually happened to come in too from one of the attendees, but how come the Air Force is really their number one priority is geothermal energy?
Well, the technology, as we're learning about it, is something that we think can actually provide that base load electric power. So the conversion of heat to energy is pretty well known. It's not a really far out there technology. We know how to do geothermal for heating and cooling, and we're pretty sure that we can do the same kind of combination to deliver electricity. The type of geothermal energy that we're pursuing is not going to be specific to having special conditions underground. We think that we could literally do it just about anywhere. And putting geothermal power plants on a base means no transmission. You have no fuel supply that's going to get cut off. It is well down underground, so protected from attack. And it's easy to dial up and down. So when we do it at scale, we can even share it with the community. If we could do, our director says that if we could do geothermal energy at every single Air Force installation, we would do it. And 15 years from now, I hope to see it, being built at 80%. There's always going to be exceptions. Maybe there's no space to put it, like when we're located in a city. But I really am impressed. My household is high on the progressive scale. We have a geothermal heating and cooling system. I drive an all-electric car. I'm all in. I probably know a huge amount about geothermal that a lot of people in our office are not dealing with because I have it in my house.
That is wonderful. We actually just had a question that came in about geothermal power in the chat. Are you further along with geothermal power production than the pilot project being built in Utah?
We have 3 pilots going on right now. So Mountain Home, that's in Idaho, JBSA in Texas, and I forget where the third one is. But no, we're not further along. The Utah project is not, as far as I know, actually generating electricity. They are working on accessing the resource and making sure that their conduit, I guess you would call it, for exchange of heat is working properly. Nobody's generated electricity that I know of yet doing this. Our first pilot that will be proving its concept is probably 18 months out, I think, before we'll see real results with that. And then what comes after that is improving drilling speed and lowering drilling cost. That's the major technology. Sage Ellington, yes, Dr. Hartman.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, you talked about a lot of different aspects of what your office is doing. So as a whole, how does the Air Force describe its approach to energy and environmental effects? Obviously, you guys are very, very forward thinking in terms of the different service areas. But if you had to sum it up in 30 seconds.
Sure. A colleague of mine, Chris Murray, likes to jokingly say there are only 3 things you need to know about our office. Number 1, everything we do is to provide energy resilience at our installations. And I forgot the other 2. So yes, it's about dependable access to power and water under whatever the circumstances. And in terms of approach, we're looking at innovative, cost-effective, and climate-informed solutions. So we want to earn our wings in every project, but there's still some sense of the practical involved. We're not ripping out still functioning gas boilers to put in electric ones. We replace them at their end of life. Where the cost of natural gas is a tiny fraction of electricity, we're not going to switch just because we want to be carbon free. We're going to keep an eye on how the cost of electricity can become competitive with the current fuel source. It's the military, mission's going to come first. Air Force or any branch is going to want to maintain worldwide superiority and not jeopardize something to tick a box. You saw the resilience score has a lot of dimensions. And I said that each mission on a base has its own score too. We move the needle as far as we can on as many things as we can and maintain an awareness of where we hope to do even better. The innovation group, we're often looking at technologies that won't be ready for maybe 5 years. They don't help us a lot today, but in 5 years, we'll still have 100 bases more to do. So we keep an eye to the future. And sometimes our conversations may also be guiding tech innovators about the direction that we'd like, so that would allow us to consider their projects down the road.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Now, one of the other questions in the chat kind of goes along with what I was going to ask you is what are the key challenges in upgrading the Air Force's worldwide bases? And this goes along with the chat is how is the Air Force approaching decarbonization or decarbonizing heating in cold climates?
Sure. Well, there are a couple things that come to mind. I mentioned earlier that every solution is bespoke, totally custom for the situation of the specific base. We wish that there was an easy way to filling a requisition list with cookie cutter solutions. Oh, you have this issue. This is what you want to do to fix it. It's not like that at all. Nothing stands by itself. So it's a big challenge to, find things that are repeatable. All the systems need to work together, and the combinations or permutations can seem endless. We have a few thousand gaps that we've identified on a little more than half our bases. And now that's not saying anything's in jeopardy. It's just telling us all the little things that we want to be prepared for. There are many commonalities between gaps. For example, there are 60 kinds of things to address with HVAC systems, for example, but they all agglomerate into HVAC issues when you look at the big picture. 200 overhauls are a tall order for anyone. They spread out all over the world, from Japan to England to Idaho. Overseas, we have to deal with policies unique to each host country. Here at home, we have to accommodate differences between a radar station, the coast of Massachusetts, boiling heat of Texas desert, freezing temperatures of rural Alaska, windstorms in Greenland that throw pebbles at stuff 100 miles an hour, try to find the unity in that. It's always also very difficult for people to imagine that the government doesn't spend money on military infrastructure. We don't have a pot of project money to spend. We can't just go buy a generator or solar panels to add resilience. What we're allowed to do is to continue to pay our same electric bill every month. Not a lot of creativity there. That's why we typically end up working with our utility partners, so they upgrade the infrastructure and we buy power. One of the creative scenarios I describe, Air Force doesn't reduce its monthly power bill at a base, even though the new upgrades have allowed them to increase efficiency and reduce energy consumption by, say, 35%. We have a long-term contract, and the utility knows how long it takes to pay off the equipment. So overall, they consider it a pretty safe investment. The Air Force wouldn't see a change in the bill, but we see a change in reliability and resilience. You can imagine it's a challenge to shop for cutting edge solutions and not even the actual buyer. Decarbonization, it's what we call electrification. I think the word electrification is not just plugging things in that are electric. It's really being carbon free. And it would be difficult to answer that question about how do we decarbonize heat, because every situation is going to demand a different solution. Alaska, it's going to be, maybe it's excess waste heat from a microreactor. In Florida, it's going to be something else. And we're looking at capturing waste heat from buildings and saving it until the winter. There's not our pilot, there's another pilot going on in the East Coast where they're successfully doing that so well that the power company came out and said, hey, we think your meter's broken because you haven't bought any electricity from us to heat your buildings. And it's like, no, we took it from the summer and we used it in the winter, with 1% loss per month.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, maybe we should look at that. So it really depends on where you are.
Oh, I mean, I can only imagine. Now, you mentioned some of the projects earlier, and I know we have quite a few questions that are coming in from attendees, so we are going to do our best to get to the questions today. If we don't get a chance to answer your specific question, though, don't worry. Paul gets a copy of all of them, and he will follow up, or somebody else at his office will follow up. Now, let's talk about the size and the scope of the projects that you work with. So why does the Air Force really prefer these larger integrated projects?
I think I touched on this one a little bit before,
Mhm.
and it encompasses several reasons.
Mhm.
There's a large amount of procedural overhead and time required developing a project, finding a solution partner, getting a contract written, and then administering the contract. Imagine doing that 10 times at every base, one for each upgraded component. And then, as I said, all these component systems need to work together flawlessly. And when you put them in separately, you don't know if they'll actually work together very well. It's much better when we have what we call coalition solutions that combine multiple technologies, expertise, centralized management. I find a parallel in healthcare, one of my previous careers. If you you do want a primary care doctor who knows all the specialists you're going to see and review and coordinate separate treatments as a coordinated whole health plan. If you only go see a series of specialists, they might not even know the other ones exist or know what they're doing will affect how another specialist treatment, recommendations are going to come out. So in terms of larger projects, many things in infrastructure make more business sense at a utility scale, especially when we're partly dependent on the utility company to make things happen. So you have a lot of factors that are leaning into one another. New CFE generation plants located on our base that only powers our base could easily be built, but would it be economically feasible? Maybe not. Now a plant that's built on our base that's resilient because there's no transmission line to cut. Most of the time, the majority of the power could be dispatched to the surrounding community. Within the larger community, you have tens of thousands of ratepayers supporting new construction, not just one commercial customer. That frequently makes more sense. Think about it in terms of unit cost. Air Force will need power, probably increasing in amount for the foreseeable future, as far as we know, and not going to go to waste because we bought it in bulk. So like Costco, it makes sense to think about bulk sizes instead of shopping for the week or the month. In energy, larger scale often drops long-term cost. We won't succeed if we approach solutions building by building. We have 88,000 buildings. That would require 88,000 separate projects completed 1 per hour, 24 hours a day for the next 10 years, and that's just crazy time. It requires a scale up to address the whole campus as a single project and encompass numerous issues all at once.
I that would be a lot. That would definitely be a lot. What are some of the surprising products or partnerships that you have had the chance to be a part of since you started your career there?
Surprising. Hmm. I feel just a little bit disconnected from some of the projects themselves because I'm out on the front edge of the innovation side. So we're looking at what could be possible, not what we're actually doing.
Mhm.
But if I get the chance, I'll talk to you about energy as a service and why I tell
Yep.
people about energy as a service, a concept. It's not a project product kind of thing so much, but really another way of thinking. So, when we're talking about innovation, we're not only talking about technologies, we're talking about the way we do things.
No, definitely. So why don't we just jump into that? So how does energy as a service contribute to energy resilience at the installations?
Okay. Energy as a service is a business model, firstly. It's intended to provide maximum benefit for the installation without upfront costs, plus deliver resilience, efficiency, and cost controls all in one. So instead of the Air Force doing procurement and energy management as part of their job, that instead falls to the energy supply company, ESCO, or utility. I described a scenario where replacement of equipment, upgrades, and the addition of control systems reduced consumption and increased efficiency. I think I may also just be thinking of that in my head. What would otherwise be recognized as savings on a monthly power bill instead goes to pay off the capital cost of all the upgrades. And over a long contract becomes the profit margin for the energy supply company that invests in the infrastructure. So what the Air Force does in this process is define the resilience goals, identify the critical areas that need service priority in the event of disaster, and then leave the choice of solutions to the energy supply partner. The solution provider operates and maintains the systems and can even continue to upgrade those things over time for continuous improvement as new options become available. So the Air Force buys, in this case, electricity and typically pays the same monthly bill as before. It's similar to no money down solar installation option, but for all the systems, not just rooftop solar. I think in Hanscom Air Force Base in Massachusetts, where we're piloting energy as a service, the first in the government to do that, the project's investment would have otherwise cost somewhere around $10 million up front, and we didn't pay any of that. The utility partner even proposed more than we initially thought we could do within the scope of the pilot when they came back with their planned upgrade list. And I personally really hope this continues to go well and that we can replicate it at lots of other installations, because it seems really simple in comparison to us figuring stuff out. And so, we have, when I'm just explaining, what to have in mind when you talk to us about projects, they will say, get us to our goals on time. And then if you can do that, I'm agnostic to the way you do it. It's basically a performance contract.
Okay.
And here in at Hanscom Air Force Base, we use the OTA contract vehicle, and it's a 3-year pilot project.
So what type of effects have you seen these projects have on the, greater community? And how are people at your office really, channeling the interests of community members when you are working on these projects?
Well, considering community benefits, I mean, to make sense for our partners, we typically need a scale up past our critical needs within the fence. That both helps us meet our goal of community benefit, one of the mandates that we have, 8 mandates to follow, and it helps making business case for investment. So, you know, it's one hand shaking the other. Yes, we like the fact that it has a community benefit, but the community benefit's almost essential for the scale up that we need to do. So no resistance there. As you'd expect, the community around our base is also where many of the people working on the base live with their families.
Mhm.
It's also sometimes where our supplies come from. Why wouldn't we look to benefit them? Stable power and water for the entire community pushes that line where we could be cut off from the grid, even further back from our fence. So when we look for support, financial or otherwise, it's easier to make a case with the state or the city where we're located when it benefits residents around the base. What politician wouldn't like to take credit for helping ensure intermittent power and water scarcity are no longer issues for the constituents in their community? So, we can get support that way for not having a pot of money that we're able to spend on, out of our
Out of
own.
Yeah. Do you think when you're approaching partners, do you think it is well known that the government does not provide you a budget for infrastructure
Oh, no,
projects?
no.
I'm speaking as a military wife whose husband deals with budgets and everything like that. So I have a little bit of background, but
Yeah,
it
the
wasn't.
government buys planes, they buy, bullets, they buy, many things, but infrastructure is not generally one of them, and they have sort of given us one of those, oh, well, look at that, you figured out how to do it without us. And now they actually encourage us. They said, oh, yeah, third-party finance, that makes sense. We don't need to do appropriations for this. You figured it out. Dr.
Mhm.
Hartman, I think his listing is probably sweating bullets because, that's one of our metrics is how much funding have we secured to actually make these projects move forward. But it's scary and fun a little bit. It shows that we've almost beat the system. You think about red tape and how you have to follow all the rules. And if we did what everybody has done for the last 40 years, we wouldn't succeed.
No.
We really are thinking about new processes and new tools and making them to work together in ways that haven't before. My
Yeah.
favorite thing from college, people used to tell me, you can't do that with glass. I was first an engineer, and then I was an artist in glass science, and I would make neon sculptures. And my professor would tell me, you can't make a neon tube longer than 27 feet. I'm like, okay, why? And
Mhm.
he says, because it will melt. And I said, well, if melting's the only problem, then I can come up with a new process by which it won't melt. And then I lit a 37-foot tube instead of a 27-foot tube. And he's like, how did you do that? I said, well, I asked the engineering question. I said, what are the conditions you're saying that and why is the reason that I can't do this? Same with the, government. Why is the reason you're saying I can only do it this way? What are you using as the basis for that judgment? And then we say, okay, well, now that I understand the barrier you imagine exists, I can work on a process that addresses that.
And I'm just looking at the time and all the questions coming in, so apologies for
Sure.
the little the little delay there. But I'd like to talk, you mentioned some innovative approaches that are being employed. Are you, is your office using, have an interest in geohydrogen, or, just bridging the gap between certain things?
Yeah, the appeal of geohydrogen is that it could be located on our base, and there's no transportation issue with that. We think that we might have two bases where that exists, but we don't have anything that runs on hydrogen right now, really. So even if we found it, what will we do with it? We don't really have the ecosystem required for storage or, consumption. All that stuff is, in the queue. We're very hopeful for it. The reason that we like geohydrogen is the cost. We looked at, green hydrogen, and sure, we could do that, but in general, our bases don't output excess power. So what are we going to make green hydrogen with? We only consume what we actually need to consume. And it's not like a power plant where you have excess and you're like, what do I do with the excess? I don't spill it.
Mhm.
So green hydrogen doesn't really make, economic sense there. And if the cost of geohydrogen is going to be $1 a kilogram, that's a reasonable price in comparison. Now, Department of Energy says we're going to get green hydrogen down to $1 a kilogram. We'll see who wins. It's a race.
It's a
But
race. It
again,
is definitely.
technology agnostic, but we're thinking ahead of, all right, when we're getting ready to use hydrogen in the future. Today, we use natural gas. We might imagine using ammonia at some point. We might, imagine that a transition to hydrogen will happen in the future. We're now looking at buying backup generators that are multi-fuel capable. So today they run on natural gas, tomorrow they run on ammonia, sometime in the future they run on hydrogen without having to switch that equipment. So it's not losing its life to a new fuel. It
Yeah.
is resilient because we can change the fuel that we have available. Okay, well, our hydrogen supply is gone. We can go back to natural gas, or we can truck some ammonia in and still run it.
Yeah, so it's adaptable depending on
Right,
your
resilient.
fuel source is. So that's fantastic. I do, before I give you back the presentation to talk about the award winners that you want to highlight, I want to, talk a little bit more about the project with the Navy and how that project really came about in terms of helping deal with the water crisis, and just a general,
Gosh, I
overview.
wish I had more details on it. I learned about it secondhand. So I know that there are about 40 abandoned oil derricks off the coast uh, of California, and the state of California, along with, I think it was originated by Navy. We happen to have bases out there as well, so we're looking at where they located and where can the clean water be pumped to. So in Vandenberg is an example. And the idea was to, either California could either destroy the platforms or they could try and find a use for it. I'm not sure who initiated the concept, but the idea is to do power generation. Maybe it's a wind turbine that's mounted on the oil derrick, and that provides the electricity that runs the desalination engine for the fuel, for the water. And because it's so far away from shore, usually with desalination, you worry about the high concentration of salt water affecting wildlife. It's so far out that the general area where you have, fish and wildlife near the shore, it's beyond that. So it's not, something you're doing at the neck of a bay, the stream, and you're hoping that, it washes out into the ocean to dilute. Is all well way beyond where you really don't see fish anymore. And if we have that platform out there that's already proven and stable, then we're not talking about destroying something that was highly invested in, where they can replicate it if it works at one at 40 other locations, and all these can start pumping clean water back to the shore. it's kind of exciting. I only learned about it a few months ago that it even existed. But I apologize. I don't have a lot of detail about it.
No need to apologize at all. I'm glad that you brought that up. I want to give it back to you because we are running out of time, and I don't want us to miss our opportunity to have you highlight the top
Sure.
awards that you want to give out and just talk a little bit about why those were chosen.
All right, let's bring the slides back up here and share window.
And I do want to thank everybody while he's getting the slides up. I do want to thank everybody for actively participating in today's discussion. Again, Paul will get a copy of all the questions that were submitted, all the comments. And if you haven't already done so in your resources tab, you have the ability to download a copy of the slide deck that he shared.
Yep, it's not being friendly, but restart the PowerPoint here for you.
Oh, you're good. I mean, technology is absolutely amazing. It's we need it in today's society, in today's world, but it doesn't always work. I remember, just as a side note, a few years ago, starting the summit, my computer decided it was going to restart about 10 minutes before I was supposed to go live and update. So, those are always fun times.
Yeah, slideshow from current slide, and I see it. So let's see if you can see it here. So share. Well, I'm not sure it's going to show the slide. I apologize. You might
Oh,
have
you're
a
fine.
copy of it there.
I was going to say, if you want to just kind of give a little bit of a wrap up,
Yeah,
I'll pull up the slide deck because you shared that with me, and then we can go from there.
that's totally fine. I think it just didn't like that we left and came back. Um,
I
so
can
I
understand
had
that.
the exciting experience of participating as a judge in the E&E Leader Awards process this year on behalf of the Air Force Office of Energy Assurance. And talking with Jessica and the publishers last year, I suggested that our office was interested in recognizing the outstanding endeavors of some of the top class entrants in energy innovation. The innovation group always has an eye on industry, and together we thought that calling attention to some specific projects and products that have earned respect from the Air Force was something we should do. 3 entries have been selected for recognition by OEA this year, and I'm delighted to describe their achievements and deliver these awards. The
All right, can
first,
we see?
yep, can you see?
Excellent. Yes.
All right. The first award today goes to Wärtsilä for the HMM generating station hydrogen fuel demonstration. There are several contributing factors I want to draw attention to. First, this was a collaborative effort between multiple companies that each contribute something to the greater solution, along with researchers and subject matter experts. A collaborative approach is important to the Air Force because we always look at energy resilience holistically. Second, the tests were practical. And rather than guessing at knowable information, they took initiative to test the boundaries of the possible using what technology is already in place and available today. This was not a theoretical exercise. Third-party auditing of experimental data makes this a standout test, and the detail level of measurements on output and safety demonstrate a thoughtfully constructed experiment. Third, this experiment was intended to be a bridge to the future. With real, concrete data, Wärtsilä is pushing the industry forward, trying stuff now to find a clearer path forward. Congratulations. The next award goes to EVLO, for utility scale integrated best solution located in Parent, Quebec. There are a few features I want to call out here too. First is energy resilience for the community. This project benefits an entire community, not just one large customer. Second is scale. The dramatic reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is achieved because it's at utility scale, the size at which Air Force prefers to do projects. Third is successful integration with a major power system, including real-world testing and adjustments both before and after deployment. It's essential to consider how systems will need to work together. One of the reasons the Air Force looks for coalition solutions is to ensure we're approaching resilience holistically and not wasting effort trying to plug things together that work fine independently, not as a complex system. So congratulations. The final award today goes to Pearl Homes for the Net Zero Community Housing Project at Hunters Point. Here again, a few elements of this project stand out. First, this was another collaborative effort between researchers and industry with a specific and practical application. What really stands out is the open declaration to freely sharing and coaching other builders so that they can repeat the achievement. This demonstrates integrity and first-class citizenship that should be acknowledged. Second, this project blew past the net zero into net positive with 160 homes in the community producing more energy than they consume. Third, the project incorporates some amount of future-proofing by doing more than expected. The environment is considered holistically, and this project addresses numerous things looking forward that might have been ignored by most developers. Congratulations. So, as you continue today, I hope that you are more than passive participants. The 2024 Environment and Energy Leader Solution Summit has done an excellent job bringing together thought leaders, industry experts, and professionals like you to explore innovative solutions and strategies in the ever-evolving energy and environment leadership landscape. I hope that you see this summit as both inspiration and opportunity to do more of the meaningful work that we all care about. And I hope to see some of you bringing solutions and ideas to the Air Force in the weeks and years to come. So thank you, Jess, and thank you everyone who's been listening.
Yes, thank you. And I know we had a certain number of people in here with us, but we actually had over 100 people watching in the lobby too. So a lot of individuals got to experience this conversation today. And I promised I did not pay him to say those nice things about E&E Leader. Paul is just a
No
wonderful
gifts
person.
to the government. I'll end up in the stockade.
Yes, Paul is just a wonderful individual to work with. Thank you again for being a part of the summit, for kicking it off. And we look forward to working with you more in the future and finding out more about your the great work that you're doing. And thank you for highlighting those a few of those award winners. And we have, real quick, I have to put a plug in because the awards program is going to open up in a couple of months. We already have had people and companies asking us about that. So if you want to know more information before we actually launch next year's event, please feel free to reach out to us. So at this point, we're going to end our opening keynote. And Paul, thank you again. And I hope everyone enjoys the summit, and looking forward to talking with others throughout today and tomorrow. Bye, everyone.